Unfortunately, I'm having to like refilm this entire thing. I accidentally formatted my card without getting the original video off. We're doing the Delro d650 comparison. On the left here is the SXK version. On the right here is the authentic version by Delro JG3PO as the modder. Okay. So right off the bat, we have what looks like very similar branding at the top there. I'd say that's like dead on. What if we feel it? Yeah, it even feels the same. A little bit of a difference there in these, in the threading piece, right? The biggest difference is clearly going to be the chip. This is the, what's this called? SDI 60. And then this is a DiCodes. They both turn off and on with 5 clicks, unlike an SXK chip, which pretty much always stays on. You'll see the DiCodes chip is a bit bigger. I think this is, don't quote me, I don't think this is an Extreme V3 chip. I think this is something a little different. I think this is like a slightly upgraded chip. Clearly the C-frame is like a satin matte silver gray look, whereas this is like a more glossy anodized black. Oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, look at that. That's new. That was never there before. That is actually the paint. Because I can't scratch that off. No, that is like missing paint on the bottom there. Well, these were identical at the base, but now that is quite marred up. Wow. Okay. That's new. Unfortunately. I've been taking this to work a lot. This has been a bit of a beater since it's a clone, so I don't care that much. But it shows you how the anodized paint is not going to hold up too well. Let's look at the bottom here. So here's the difference in our battery contacts. You see on the authentic one, it has like a really weird little tab. I mean, the way it's like cut, it's very different than anything I've ever seen for battery contacts. But yeah, they both have that like gold-plated brass stuff going on. You'll see the authentic one is a bit more like of a yellowed color than this one here. 510, or I mean base connection. The difference in that is that the authentic one doesn't have any kind of, yeah, so here's the difference in the base connections of them. This one on the clone looks like it's adjustable, whereas this one, I wouldn't say so. Although it does, you know, you can get into it with a hex, but this has a flat head, and it's more elevated. This one seems a little more flush. I also noticed about this, if I don't have this facing like straight on, if I actually had that flathead piece, thread of it, where you actually put this driver in, if I had it like this, I wasn't getting connection. So if you have it, if you mess with that, I would try to have it straight on, like vertical, as you're looking straight to the mod. In case you run into an issue, I really think there's something going on there. Here they are this way. I'd say overall the authentic one is heavier. It's a good bit heavier, and I think, I don't know if it has to do with the weight of the chip or what. I mean, the Delrin is we'll get to the Delrin, but it's a whole different thing. It's also a little bigger, like it's wider. See, you can see how the authentic one is actually wider than the clone. And I think it's even wider side to side too. I'd say they're about even for that. Although, I don't know, it almost feels like it's wider. It could be the weight throwing me off, but yeah, so other than like the chipset and everything, there's other slight differences, like this panel here, everything about this here, it's raised, it's higher on this than here. The cuts are deeper, so the wattage buttons, this dips down a lot further than this side. There's a bigger like crease between the up and down. I don't know if you could pick that up. You see how much more shallow this is? Or shallow this is and deeper this is. Same with the buttons, the fire buttons. This isn't as deep as this. This is a lot more concave. It dips much further down, like a crease for your finger. It's also a lot louder. So people were right about the Delrin having a loud fire button. Listen to this one, the authentic. Listen to the clone one. It's a lot softer and lighter of a throw. Very loud. Same with the... Actually, it's not as pronounced with the wattage buttons. I'd say they're about the same. But yeah, this fire button is really loud. So I have the stainless steel screws on here. This has the white ones. And they are different. This is like a star screw, whereas this is like your standard, you know, hex type screw that you would use, you know, like one of these T-tools for. But yeah, this like extends out a lot further. There's a lot more height to it. It like protrudes up more, and you do notice that for sure. And then lastly, I guess the other main factor would be the Delrin itself. This Delrin is a lot more, it's more rubbery, it's more textured, it feels thicker, whereas this feels a lot more matte. And, well, it's hard to describe it in this term because, like I said, this is textured, whereas this is just more, oh, I don't want to say it's matte because it actually feels more of a gloss than anything. And it's opaque. It's very bright white because it's solid all the way through. See, I can't see my finger at all through this. Whereas on here, you can actually see the shadow of my finger because it's more, and even like, look, the back strip here, you can see through to it. You couldn't see anything on this one because this is actually like a real POM Delrin, whereas this is like a cheaper type POM. Even this groove is deeper here, I've noticed, for getting your panel off. Like the paddle on here extends up further. Oh yeah, that's another thing about this. So it is wider side to side because, or it could also have to do with the difference in these. I can't get authentic panels on this clone, but I can get. Let me see something here. Here's the clone panel on the authentic one, and look. This will work, but I tried it the other way around and it wouldn't work. So, you know, the boxes are different for the chip because these are elevated. So there are, you know, of course, there's going to be slight differences to it, being that, you know, this is a clone. Yeah, there's just a bigger groove, a bigger cutout for you to get a hold of this panel to take it off and on. By the way, I want to thank Justin Johnson and Caleb King for allowing me to make this video. Those guys were kind enough to send a few things on for me to review, and Caleb was kind enough to let me use this authentic D650 for the comparison. So big shout out to those guys working in that vape shop in Ohio, doing their thing, and you know, supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate it. By the way, here's the packaging difference. So the newer Authentics may come in something different, but this is an early one, and this is all it came in. Now, we're missing the tool. I would like to take this off and take the C-frame off to show you, but he didn't he must have forgot to include the specific Delro tool that actually tightens and loosens this piece, so I won't be able to show you, you know, how the C-frame comes apart. But you know, Jim VV, I think Mark Todd also has a video on these, and you can see that more thoroughly. So yeah, this is what the clone one came in. I have a full review on that. And yeah, these panels are pretty cool. They're like ridged mesh kind of deal. So they're a little more rough. They're not like real smooth, but it also, that helps to kind of provide a grip for it. And you know, they have that like resiny looking control kind of vibe that we've come to love. A lot of companies kind of adopted that styling. It's nice that there's actually a piece in here, and this is the drip tip that comes with the Lightin Up Customs panel set. Very nice drip tip, very nice shape to it. The threading has a little bit of that satin matte vibe to it as well. Just say the threads are very smooth. So here it is going into the clone. Yeah, super smooth threads. And then with the authentic. And it just goes well that the threads even have that gray satin vibe to them, just like this particular C-frame. This C-frame's made in a bunch of different stylings, but he has the gray one here. Here's the original panel. It comes with the authentic Delro. Very similar to the one on the clone, except, you know, it's a little more raised. I wanted to show you a difference between the different kinds of Delrins, right? So this is a real Delrin. It's more transparent, it's more fleshy, it's more textured. It has a darker look to it because it has some transparency. Whereas this is either a cheaper POM or I think actually ABS plastic. These are different materials in that, you know, they don't feel the same. This actually has even though it's smoother and flatter in terms of, like, you know, the fleshy aspect of it, it's still there. Whereas this doesn't have that, but they both have that opaque, bright white characteristic that you don't really see with real POM. Real Delrin isn't as opaque, it's more transparent. Ghost, you know, it almost looks like it can glow in the dark, right? See a little bit more of that transparency right there. You know, this is the real stuff on both of these, and then you have something like this in the middle, which is a lot flatter, bright white. That's your difference in Delrin quality. So the one that has the screws in it is the clone panel. Now, the weird thing is this does look much brighter. And I think it's just because this hasn't really been used to the extent that this one has. They both have a similar, the feel is not too far off, but I can feel like this one is a little bit, just a bit more like smooth, and this one's just a little bit more textured, but it's not as obvious as with the mod itself. The mod, it does stand out. Even though the screws are technically different, that the silver ones are more of like a star shape, I actually was able to use the same T-tool to disassemble and reassemble. I don't know if you could see the difference, but on the left is the clone button, wattage button, and the impression it has doesn't have a little centered nipple or bump to it. On the clone products, they just use these black rubber grommet pieces, or I don't know what to call them. I don't know what they're called, grommets, but little stick-on things. If you can see that Delro insignia right there. And then on this one, yeah, it's harder to come up on the authentic one because, like I said, it's just that texturedness to it. Harder edges on here than on the inside of this one, which is kind of surprising. Overall, these have deeper cuts. Yeah, like this is a much deeper cutout than this one, so it's easier to take on and off because of the deeper cut. So that's a good thing. Yeah, the panel magnets wise, I mean, I thought these were really good at first because there wasn't much movement, but now there is a little movement side to side and up and down. It's not terrible because it's trapped around this piece here for the screen, but there's still movement nonetheless. You know, the panel for my BM40 is 1,000 times sturdier, actually. Oh, sturdier. What do you know? We got the sturdy RVA. So it's pretty well documented, but I thought we would just take a glance at this chip. So yeah, this DiCodes, like I said, it's much more convenient to use. It reads your chip right away. It doesn't ask you, you know, is this the right chip or whatever. The only thing with DiCodes is that if you don't have a brand new fresh battery, like I mean like you just bought it battery, if you're using an old battery even on a full charge, what will happen is the volts, it'll drop down right away. You see how it moves like that? Yeah, that's a DiCodes thing, and it's very frustrating. And same with the ohms, it gives you like just doesn't give you like a, you know, to the 10th kind of number. So if I wanted to change the wattage, I would press the down wattage button. And you press it once, you wait for it to come up power watts, and then you start changing it. Alright, here's an interesting part. So on the left you have the clone, on the right you have the authentic. And the plates are different, I'm just noticing. The print, the font, is actually bigger on the clone than on the authentic. The screws are black on the clone and not on the authentic, which is very interesting. Usually the clone stuff is always silver. We could see these are different. These have little ridged, starred spaces for your screws to get threaded on, and this just has more round ones. You can see that the tape goes all the way to the base here, and it doesn't on here. And of course we have, you know, this lovely, you know, talk about attention to detail. So Delro 2022 DiCodes, I mean, very classy. But it was nice that the clone version even thought to include this, considering they don't even make clone panels for this yet. So the D650 part is there on both, but you have a really hard time seeing it on camera. It's much more pronounced on the clone than on here, I'm noticing. But I'd say with most of the features, the engravings, all the machining is actually deeper on the authentic than the clone. And my main takeaway is you do get a different sense of quality. Now, is it a quality difference that's worth, I don't know, $400? I don't know, that's up to you. But I will say that there is clearly a quality difference. Just in the hand feel alone, I can tell if I was blindfolded, had I not known, you know, analyze these ahead of time, I would be able to tell that this was the higher quality product. Just by the weight of it, it just feels a lot more solid. And like I said, it is a little heavier and wider, but not necessarily in a bad way. And it's such a minute difference that it's not going to affect it negatively. It's looking like the clone one is actually just a tiny bit taller. So even though this may be a little wider, the clone is taller. But I don't mind the hand feel of the clone whatsoever. I think it's still a pretty good hand feel. I mean, but that's the result of the design itself. But yeah, you know, very slight nuances, little differences to pick up on, but thought it would be interesting to point out the differences nonetheless. So yeah, there you have it. This is what, like an $80 or $90 product, and this, I think this retailed for like $500. So pretty interesting, and they've gone up. I mean, when they first came out secondhand, I think these were up at like, you know, 7 or 8, and then now they've gone down to probably like 4 or 5, and probably like a $400 to $600 range for these. They're not super rare, but they are kind of rare still. So this particular kind of DiCodes, I don't mind. I can't stand the BF60, but I don't mind the I have to reassemble this before I start pressing buttons. Yeah, I don't mind this extreme V3 type variation at all. It's pretty cut and dry. And, you know, as highly sought out as the authentic Delro d650s are, you know, he has a slew of other things out right now. You know, he still has the D60s. He's been making more rezos. He's got the let me get this right. The SL versions, the SLD and the SLE side load, instead of the boro going right in through the front, it's loaded through the side here. Those are generally 3D printed though, whereas this is Delrin. And he also has the D100C Delro recently, which is still a lipo, but it's like a taller, thinner one that, you know, gets better battery life than the original Delro D60. But yeah, this is the white Delrin. There's black ones. And there's also Peak and Frosted, like a clear frosted PC. And those are even more rare. There was a drop of 25 each of the Peak and the Frosted, and that was like maybe last month. But yeah, he's already moving on to doing rezos again. So he kind of bounces around from mod style to mod. He's got a few mods at the moment that are still technically kind of current. So he doesn't do, you know, too big a quantity of any of them because he's always bouncing around. So that's why these are pretty sought out. There's also Monarchy collab versions of this in Peak and Frosted. I think there was only 4 done total, and I know the guy that has, I think, 3 out of the 4, or I think he may have even gotten all 4 by now. So, you know, those are even harder to come by. I think he said they had a value of like $3 grand a piece, which is crazy. Or I think it might have even been 3,000 pounds, Great British pounds, so even more. So yeah, I mean, Delro definitely, you know, is in a winning streak and a hot item, you know, company, one of the few companies that are still doing really well, and I'm glad that they're US made. And again, huge thanks to Justin and Caleb for the opportunity to make this